Tell us about the Satchurator. Why?
Why? I like that. Why? Yes. Okay. Distortion is very important. For a guitar player, they're always fooling around with gain. They're trying to figure out, how do I get sustain? How do I get compression? I think that for decades now, what we've been using are two things. We've been using compression limiters in the studio to create the illusion on a recording that you have infinite sustain, when in reality you don't. And then you've got the live performance, and then whether you're in front of an audience or rehearsing or by yourself, where you're trying to imitate what you've heard on record. And distortion, you know, on all its levels, performs that task in two ways. Number one, it simulates what you imagine a guitar setup is like when you're hearing it on recording, a big sound, lots of sustain. The other thing is that distortion in itself is an art form. There is a message inherent in distortion. And so I always thought, well, a distortion pedal has to solve those two issues, is that it has to provide sustain, but it can't muddy up the articulation. And then plus it has to be able to make a sound that is an artistic statement in itself, so that if it's used improperly, it's as interesting as if it's used properly for sustain. Now, once you get into making distortion, there are lots of ways to do it. But once you choose your path, then the options start to become limited. And like if you're making anything else, you're making sunglasses or jackets, you're somewhat limited to what comes out of the ground, what we have on the planet, what people are making. So we're using metal and plastic and silicone and stuff like that. And you've got to really spend the time to go through all of the options of these components to make sure that you've gotten the best out of every little part. The input gain, the output gain, the tone quality, you know, how the transistor feeds the op amp, how the diode creates the distortion, how many do you want, you know, at what stages do other diodes kick in, and then how does that affect how a guitar player is really going to use the pedal. And then beyond that, once you solve those issues, you can start to think, well, how else could we use the pedal? What happens if you sing into it? What happens if you put a snare drum in it, set the gain down low, and you realize it starts to become extremely useful if you've done all those other steps right. So for me, I would say distortion is more of an art form. I'm always looking to use distortion to create a voice for the instrumental melody that is so necessary to make a statement, because I don't have the benefit of lyrics when I'm making the instrumental record. So, you know, and then you will, I think, find if you really sit back and you look at different styles of music, you can see how guitar players use distortion to make a statement, and sometimes they withhold it when they don't want to have that enter into the story of the song. So, you know, whether you're playing Slipknot songs or you're playing like Keith Richards, I mean, you're going from 0 to 11 on the distortion scale, you know what I mean? So we wanted this box to be able to function in all those areas. But to be clear, it is a distortion box. It's not an overdrive. It's not a gainer. It's not a clean boost. It is purely what it is. It's a very unique and pure distortion box.